apratītya samutpannaṃ kuto duḥkhaṃ bhaviṣyati anityam uktaṃ duḥkhaṃ hi svābhāvye vidyate.
Apratītya samutpannaṃ kuto duḥkhaṃ bhaviṣyati anityam uktaṃ duḥkhaṃ hi svābhāvye vidyate. MMK chapter 24 verse 21. How will suffering that is not dependently arisen come about? For it is said that suffering is impermanent. Where self-existence prevails, that is not found. So the question is, kuto duḥkhaṃ bhaviṣyati, and kuto duḥkhaṃ, before sandhi, before it's combined for euphony, it's kutaha, taha being the ablative suffix, so from. Kutaha, from where? From what grounds? How? Duḥkhaṃ, nominative singular neuter, suffering. Bhaviṣyati, third person singular future of bhu, the verb to be, to become, to come about. Kuto duḥkhaṃ bhaviṣyati, how will suffering come about? So that's the question the Buddha answered under the Bodhi tree, and the answer he realized was suffering is dependently arisen from ignorance, from samskaras, from divided consciousness, etc., etc. From psychophysicality. From divided consciousness comes psychophysicality, the sense of myself as a separate body-mind, separated from everything else and everybody else. So here the question is, how will suffering come about apratītya samutpannaṃ, not dependently arisen? So pratitya samutpannaṃ is samutpannaṃ is neuter singular nominative because it qualifies duḥkhaṃ. So duḥkhaṃ samutpannaṃ means arisen suffering, and pratitya samutpannaṃ duḥkhaṃ, that's what the Buddha found, dependently arisen suffering. But this question is about apratītya samutpannaṃ duḥkhaṃ. That means suffering that is not dependently arisen. So the question is, how will suffering that is not dependently arisen come about? Anityam uktaṃ duḥkhaṃ hi. Anityam means impermanent. Nityam means constant or permanent. Anitya means impermanent. So anityam duḥkhaṃ means suffering is impermanent. Again, both are nominative singular neuter. Uktaṃ. Are they nominative or accusative with uktaṃ? Anyway, it doesn't matter. It's the same in it. Duḥkhaṃ is both the nominative and accusative of dukkha. So uktaṃ is a past participle of vach, to say. So anityam uktaṃ duḥkhaṃ, suffering is said to be impermanent, or it is said that suffering is impermanent. Hi means for. Anityam uktaṃ duḥkhaṃ hi, for it is said that suffering is impermanent. So it's said that suffering is impermanent at the level of conventional truth, because for a thing to be impermanent, it has to be a thing. So ultimately, it's not the case that suffering is impermanent, because the ultimate truth the Buddha taught is anucchedam ashashvatam, beyond discontinuity, anuchedam, ashashvatam, beyond continuity. However, it is said that suffering is impermanent, and in the practical or everyday sphere, if somebody is suffering, we do say, it'll pass, which is true at the level of conventional truth. Tat svābhāvye na vidyate. Tat means that, which means that suffering, that impermanence of suffering, or that fact that suffering is impermanent, or that kind of suffering. Tat means that. Svābhāvye is locative of svābhāvā, and svābhāvā is the vriddhi form, so it's the strengthened form of svābhāvā with a short sva. Svābhāvā is self-existence, so svābhāvā is sort of like self-existence-ness, something like that. So svābhāvye means in self-existence-ness. I've translated it where self-existence prevails. So there are many phrases in this chapter where Nagarjuna is just pointing to the scenario where there are self-existing things. In other words, the scheme of the opponent. And so this is another way of doing it. Svābhāvye locative, where self-existence prevails. Tat na vidyate, that is not found. So there are two senses in which suffering is not found, in which the impermanence of suffering is not found. In the opponent's scheme, if suffering is a thing unto itself, a self-existing thing, then it's for keeps. It's like a stone in Carlo Rovelli's terms. It's not happening, it's a thing, and if it's a thing with self-existence, it's not susceptible to change. So in that case, suffering can't be impermanent. But also in Nagarjuna's scheme, as I explained before, it's also not ultimately true to say suffering is impermanent, because impermanence is a teaching about things. Like the Buddha said, all samskaras are impermanent. All samskaras are full of suffering. That's true at the level of conventional truth. But ultimately, there are no samskaras. Samskaras are a convenient fiction. What there are ultimately is empty dharmas. Suffering, real suffering, is an empty dharma, not an impermanent thing. So this verse 21, is looking at suffering. Then we got verse 22 will be about the cause or the production, the accumulation of suffering. Verse 23 will be about the cessation of suffering, and verse 24 about a way leading to the cessation of suffering. So this series of 4 verses look at the Noble Truths one by one in terms of how it would be if self-existence prevailed. So this first verse looks at suffering. Apratītya samutpannaṃ kuto duḥkhaṃ bhaviṣyati anityam uktaṃ duḥkhaṃ hi tat svābhāvye na vidyate. How will suffering that is not dependently arisen come about? For it is said that suffering is impermanent. Where self-existence prevails, that is not found.